I'm Edison, and today I'll be talking about Backoffice, which is an admin tool built with the PETAL stack. And so here's the agenda for today. I'll first tell you a little bit about who I am, and then I'll give a quick demo so you know what I'll be talking about today. Then I'll talk a little bit about the motivation behind why I created Backoffice. Then I'll move on to the core tenets, basically like the design principles of the library. And then I'll touch a little bit as well on why I chose PETAL stack for this project. And with the closing note as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. So who am I? I'm from Malaysia. I had Ruby background since a couple of years back. Moved to Stockholm for Elixir like about a year and a half ago. And I'm now working with Erlang at Klarna. And you can find me on social medias with this handle. I'm also on Slack, so the Elixir Slack, so you can find me on there as well. So PETAL stack, just a quick glossary for those of you that don't know what it means. So PETAL stack stands for, it's an acronym for Phoenix, Elixir, Tailwind, Alpine, and LiveView. And yeah, so that's kind of what it means. No idea who came up with the acronyms, but I like it. So let's get into the demo, and there's like a 92% chance of this going wrong, but we'll see how it goes. So you can also there's also a QR code and link that you could check out the demo yourself. The demo is pretty basic, but I hope it illustrates some of the points that I want to talk about. So let's get into it. Sorry, I got my tabs all messed up. Right, there we go. So here is the page that you will see when you first come into the presentation. So as you can see here, this page is actually not provided by Backoffice itself. It's a dashboard page. I just put some contents here so I remember what to talk about. So first thing I want to show you is that Backoffice is responsive. So if you put it in the mobile view, you can see that it's responsive. So when building admin tools, this is not something that you have to think about, right? Then widgets is another thing. Backoffice ships you some widgets that you can have on your admin pages. You can use these to build your dashboard however you like. You can also, widgets is also like a widget protocol. So you can implement your own widgets and Backoffice will know how to render them. Then notification. This is actually triggered by a pops up under the hood. I'm not sure if you can see it. You can see that it pops up and then there's a nice animation that exits it as well. So it's actually powered by Alpine behind the scene. It's triggered by pops up, but it's not very obvious, but there's a different example that make it a little bit obvious as well. It's sort of what Sophie mentioned yesterday as well about LiveView allowing you to send messages to your LiveView and show notifications and things like that. So you saw with the notifications, you saw the animations here that pops up nicely. Then if you look at here, you can also see that the notification shows up at the bottom when you're in the mobile screen. There's nice animations when you on the sidebar as well when you're in the mobile view. So so Backoffice is kind of it shapes basic building blocks for you. So you can see here this is a sidebar. So this is provided by Backoffice. It has a layout that you can just use in your own pages as well. And you define the way you put the links. You can group them however you like. You can group them by domains and whatnot. Some admin frameworks try to infer this and automatically generate it for you, but you actually have to do this yourself in Backoffice just because everybody has different ideas of what grouping it should be, and not everybody uses context. So yeah. Anyway, so a quick, so far it's going all right, I guess. So the users tab. So just a few things here. So you can see the widgets. This is basically what Backoffice provides you. It's like a list view of rendering data, right? So there is the widget here that you can see. Backoffice just has one small widget right now, which displays something like this, but you can very easily, like I mentioned before, use a widget protocol and add more stuff if you like. You can see actions here. So you can define actions that you want to do for your resources. So there are two kinds of actions. You can see there are page actions here, which show at the top right of the page. And then there are what I call single action. They're really row actions, but row is like a display option. But yeah, I call them single action for now. And what this does is that when you can see that when you click on it, it just prints out whatever is selected. So if you say selected number 1 here, it will show that number 1 is selected. If you select all of them, like you would have like all of them selected. So you can have any logics that you want. You have hooks to implement actions, and you can bulk update, bulk delete, whatever you want. Same goes with single action. So you don't have to click on anything. It just knows how to fetch this row, right? Then there's also, maybe let's start with this. So there's also filters. So you can filter things as well, something that's built in with Backoffice. So you don't have to always like re-implement your filtering logic for your ME tools. So for example, when you click on ID, you can have when ID is equals to 1. So things show up and like what you would expect really. So yeah, that's the filtering part of it. And then you can see it has pagination support, so you don't have to think about that. You have next, if you have filters on, yeah, you can go next and all that things that you expect from paginations. So then let's maybe move on to the next one then. You can customize how you want the fields to look. So for example, you have an image that you would like to show. You can have an image shows up like a custom hook for you to render a image field. Then there is, right, create. So this is how you would create a resource. So we can just go ahead and create a resource and say, I don't know, hello could be, not demo. Right, so we save, you can see that there's a nice notification. You come back here and then there's like a new resource that you can see. You can edit things. So when you edit things, yeah, basically what you can see. You can customize what you want your forms and what you want your creation forms to look like. So you can have different fields for both of them. Then let's see what else is there. So I think we can move on to the next one. So here you can see as well, you see that this is where the pop-up should happen. Yeah, you can see it worked fine. So I have a periodic background job that would send a pop-up message to here. So for example, if you're on a dashboard page, maybe your admin would like to get notified whenever someone makes a purchase. So like Sophie mentioned, it's really easy. You just send a pop-up message to like just broadcast the message really, and then just make sure that you subscribe to it with Backoffice mount operation. So yeah, it shows up nicely, and yeah, that's what LiveView can give you. And then let me see if there's something else that I thought about. Yes, so like it has support for like actor enums as well, things that you expect, and associations. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what I want to show. Or you can also see like the links. You can be any links you want. It doesn't have to be resources inside your app. You can have it linked to live dashboard, let it link to an analytics page that you have. So it's really up to you that you can put whatever you want here as well. So I think that concludes the demo. I just wanted to quickly show you like what it was about. But it's still really early days, so there's still a lot of things that it's not entirely perfect, so to speak. But I hope that gives you like a quick preview of what Backoffice is. All right, so I guess we got the 8% chance of things going well. Right, Backoffice features. So just to recap, you saw some of the features here. It's mobile responsive, something that you don't have to think about, right? Because I find that when I was building the first version of it, I didn't think about mobile responsiveness at all. And when I had to use it, that's when I realized, oh damn, like I couldn't do anything on the mobile. Then also filtering. So you don't have to think about writing like a dynamic filter matching and all that stuff. Backoffice can provide that for you. Animations. I'll touch on a little bit about animations and how Alpine ties to it later. But basically, you saw the nice animations that Alpine provides. So notification. So there's the pop-up notification that I mentioned earlier. It's a slight improvement to Phoenix's toast what they call Flash. So the idea is that this actually survives a live redirect, which is not something I think was possible with Live Flash. And also you can add a little bit more information that you want, like what message to display instead of just one view. All right. Yeah, and then the notification is also handled by AlpineJS behind the scene, like the timer and automatically dismissing and other things. You saw widgets. Widgets are pretty extensible, and we get into that as well. Themes. Themes is not available yet, so it's coming soon. So the idea is that I can use TailwindCSS to build like a theme engine as well. So those are the features, and I guess the idea for Backoffice is also to provide like little building blocks that you can use to build your app, right? Right now, it doesn't include a dashboard page because the idea is that it provides building blocks that you can use to build a dashboard page however you like. Yeah. So let's get into like the motivation a bit, right? So I guess the first one is LiveView is really exciting. And I'm sure like Sophie can really agree with that as well. Like when it first came out, I was really excited, not just because we have the right JavaScript, less JavaScript, but also like it's a whole and entirely new programming model. And that's sort of like new ideas to the community. Like you can see other programming communities are copying the idea as well. And it's great, right? Like we're at the forefront of technology. So that was pretty inspiring. So I thought I wanted to give it a try. But at that time, the app I was working on, which is Slick Inbox, is like a newsletter reading app on mobile. Because it's a mobile app, so it wasn't a good fit for Phoenix LiveView. But I really wanted to give it a try. So I came up with the idea of, what if I can build my admin tool in it? And then I thought about it, like, it works well for admin tools because of, you need a little bit of interactivity. You basically need updated data from your backend and things like that. So I started to build a couple of pages using LiveView, and I really liked it. It worked really well. But then I find that, as I add more and more pages, I find that I'm just basically copying the modules and the templates every time I want a new resource. And I felt that, that there must be a better way. So I tried to extract things out to refactor things. And then as I was doing that, I realized, I only had a few pages to refactor, but if everybody has the build admin tools and everybody gets the same like problem, I guess, why not just sort of share with everyone? Why not, why keep reinventing the wheel, right? Maybe I can share my learnings and somebody else could share their learnings. So I decided to package it up to a library as well. And also the thing is, it doesn't really have anything specific to my app. It's just like an admin tool. So that's what I decided to do. Then another thing is, I guess it's also really good to have tutorials and books like the one Bruce and Sophie is working on. But sometimes it's great to look at actual code and see like actual projects as well. And the one that I found while developing Backoffice is Ash Admin and Live Dashboard. And maybe there are more out there, but I think it would be nice for the community to have more code examples as well. And I'm not saying that my code are the best, but by putting it out there, I think it invites scrutiny and everybody can improve and learn from each other as well. So, right. So let's jump into the core tenets then. I hope the motivations were clear, but yeah, let's jump into core tenets then. So core tenets in a way is just like fancy way of saying opinions, right? But yeah, so it basically boils down to 2 points. Like Backoffice wants to be explicit, and the second thing is that it wants to get out of your way when you need it to, because maybe you need a more complex scenarios and you don't want to get tied down by the framework you decide to choose. So those are some of the big design principles. So let's talk about explicitness first. One thing is that Backoffice doesn't try to magically generate routes for you. So I've seen some frameworks where you would do something like use Backoffice and then it would generate routes for you. But it's sort of like a pet peeve for me, but I didn't really like it that way, because when I look at the router.exs file, I like to see what exactly routes I can match. And you don't know what the use macro is doing behind the scene. Does it run a specific pipeline that you're not in control of, and things like that. So with Backoffice, you get to see everything. It fits into your pipeline, the existing pipeline perfectly. Like you can see here, this is a non-LiveView page that you would have right now. then you can just pipe it through whatever pipelines you want. You can have your authentication however you like. Backoffice just provides you the pages and the layout as you can see here. So yeah, like I guess you could also do like mix phx.routes and see the routes available. But some of the frameworks, they have like parameters in their path, and then they just dynamically matches what to render based on what parameters you pass in the path name. But that's also not easy to see what resources you actually have, right? What if you accidentally expose a resource that you didn't mean to and things like that? So I wanted things to be really explicit this way. All right, so, another thing is you can see that it sits right next to your existing non-LiveView pages, like I mentioned. And this is interesting because this means that custom pages support is basically out of the box. And this is not the case with other frameworks where you will need a way to tell the framework, I have a custom page and this is how you render it. But with Backoffice, it really doesn't matter. Yeah. Sorry. All right, so Pro, it's a source of truth for all the routes, does not hide behind a macro, does not dynamically render based on path names, sit right next to existing route. Basically what you can read on the slides here. Con is that, it might need slightly more work to implement because you would need, instead of just touching the router file once, use macro and then call it a day. This one, every time you want to add more resources to your app, you have to add them in the router as well. Perhaps this is something that could be improved. I'm not opposed to the idea. Like I said, I don't think I have the best idea for everything. But this is what I started with. All right, so the next thing is pages as well. So this is also how you create like a pages for Backoffice to render. You can see here backoffice.userlive.index. And yeah, this is what you would render in your route as well. So to create this module, you have to create that module yourself. But Backoffice provides you macros like this that you can use to basically bootstrap the page to look like a table view. So yeah, as you can see here, the macro, it has something called resolver. We'll get into resolver a little bit, which is pretty interesting. Resolver options and then resource. So that's how you tell Backoffice about what resource you want to render. This module is also where your admin specific logic goes. So if you want to customize how you render a specific field, this is where it goes. Yeah, so it's clear to you that this page is backed by this module. So it's pretty explicit that way as well. Side menus, like I mentioned, you get to group things however you like. You can nest them however you like. And like I mentioned before, like some frameworks infer that based on context and it's just not very accurate. So might as well leave everything up to the user. And maybe you like a different set of icons and yeah. All right, this is how you would configure the layout to look like. So you have labels and you can nest them however you like. You can expand them by default. You can route them to whatever link you want. Like I mentioned, external links also work. So yeah. All right, so extensibility. So that concludes the previous one. So extensibility is about not stopping you from doing more than what the framework provides, right? So I guess the first thing is resolvers. We touched on it a little bit, like how you would use it in your modules. But what resolver is that it basically is in charge of fetching the data. And Backoffice ships with an actor resolver. But what does it really mean, right? So this was not the first idea that I had in my mind, but I can get into that later. But basically, while I was refactoring that out of Slick Inbox, I realized, the admin pages that render a table view, it doesn't actually care about where your data is from. So like your data could come from an API or like a static JSON file, CSV file, or you could even, like I've seen cases where an admin tool is built by an entirely different team in the company and they consume things by API. So like it basically boils down to the admin page doesn't have to know where the data is from. So that's why Backoffice ships is what I call the resolver concept. And this was not the first idea I came up with. When I extracted out of Backoffice, out of Slick Inbox, obviously it was just using Ecto and Postgres, but then yeah, I realized to be extensible, you need like a hook like this, like adapter architecture. So that's what it looks like. And for example, if you want to create an API resolver yourself, so you can decide, where to fetch a specific resource, you can do that. All you have to do is change the resolver. You can pass in whatever you want as resolver ops, maybe some authentication tokens, so your URL and basically everything you need. And this is what an API resolver will kind of look like. All you need to do is adhere to implement the backoffice.resolver behavior. And this is how you would just fetch an API, create a struct, and basically you need to return a page struct from Backoffice so that it knows how to render paginations and things like that for you. I think that kind of concludes the API resolvers. So another thing is also like widgets, like I mentioned before. I've also seen some frameworks where they provide a certain set of widgets, and you can only use those widgets. So you don't really have a lot of choices. But with protocol in Elixir, we get to have that flexibility, right? You can render whatever you want as long as you implement the protocol. So let's look at actual code. So this is an actual code extracted from Backoffice. Like you can see that you define a struct for your modules, and then you just implement the widgets. And this is interesting as well because all you need to do is basically return like HTML safe string. But the interesting thing is that, different kinds of widgets might require different kinds of data. So for a chart widget, for example, you might not need like subtitle or hints or anything like that. Maybe you need like a specific chart widget, like a chart field. But basically, like you get to define what data you need by defining the struct upfront. And because of that, like it's a lot more flexible. Like if you have some custom widgets that you need specific data, you don't have to put it in a map and guess what the map keys would be. You can just look at the modules and you know what the struct keys would be. So that's what a widget would look like. So then also like I want to touch on why I use the PETAL stack. So again, if you were in the fireside chat yesterday, Sophie and Bruce like made a pretty compelling argument for like LiveView in general. So I would, maybe not talk so much about LiveView specifically. But the question that I get, actually, maybe I would anyway, because I have a slide here. But yeah, like the programming model makes a lot of sense, right? It might not make sense for every scenario that you have, but like I mentioned, it's perfect stack for admin tools. One of it being that it's a lot easier for developers to develop features. So you don't have to like jump into the backend code, jump into the front end code. And as like a solo developer on my project, it's a huge win, right? I don't have to like write API so that I can use like a React admin tool or something like that. And then I have to think about, states and all that stuff in front end. And, I don't want to touch front end. Yeah, so it saves a lot of time for me. And also things like live update powered by pops up, no effort. And LiveView itself, the data is basically always up to date because you fetch the data from the server. And it just makes a lot of sense to me. So then let's touch on like Tailwind and Alpine. And that's the big one that I always get like question about. And people are, not so like fixated on this idea because some people like Tailwind, some don't, and same goes with Alpine. But I'll talk a little bit why I chose them for this project. So why Alpine and Tailwind specifically? So like I mentioned before, and you saw before, animations. So if you didn't know, like the way that LiveView's programming model is set up means that it's not really good for animations because the server tells you, render this DOM and then render these DOM nodes and then Morph DOM just does its magic. And there's no hooks for you to have transitions and animations and all that stuff. So like when LiveView came out, it was copied to a lot of different languages, one of it being Laravel LiveWire. And Caleb, who developed LiveWire, found that he needed a little bit, like he loved the model, but he wanted a little bit more interactivity on the front end, that being animations and things like that. So he built AlpineJS to go along with it. So AlpineJS is purpose-built for solutions like LiveWire, like LiveView. So it fits really well together. And also, the second thing is also like Tailwind. So I bought a component library from the guys who made Tailwind called Tailwind UI. It's pretty pricey, but it's really great that I can just, sort of get started without having to code front end. The things you saw, like responsiveness and everything, is included. I don't have to think about it. Otherwise, it will probably take another couple of years before it comes out. But Tailwind UI also has like animations and things built in. So all you need, actually they work on CSS animations. So the Tailwind UI library will provide you with CSS transitions, and with Alpine, you just have to toggle them put it like a data attribute, and Alpine knows how to handle those animations. So they work really great together. And this is slightly controversial, which is also one of the reasons that people don't like them. Is I like collocating CSS and JS in HTML. Like obviously, if it gets way too complex, I would separate them out to a different file, and you can do that still. But like it provides you a really fast iterative cycle when you can just edit things on the page and it reflects instantly. I don't have to jump between different files to test out an idea. I can test out things in the browser window. And once you work with Tailwind a little bit, you sort of remember you can sort of know what the classes would look like. So oftentimes I would just write out all the text and it will come out exactly as I want it to be. Yeah, so Tailwind as well, CSS variable support. So it's good for building like design system and theming support. And that's on the roadmap. Like you can easily add in like a dark theme for your admin tool. Also something that you wouldn't want to spend effort on when building your own admin tool as well. Then basically like we know LiveView was great, and then I mentioned some things that missing like animations, but PETAL stack in general just gives you sort of everything you need, and they play really well with each other. If you have more interaction focused thing, you use Alpine, and then Tailwind just ties up with the CSS. LiveView gives you everything you need from the back end. So yeah, and also like a big shout out to Patrick Thompson's article. Like I basically have his article open like all time when I was developing Backoffice. So yeah, thanks for the resource. He goes a lot in depth about how you can use Alpine with like JavaScript hooks and like Phoenix LiveView hooks and LiveView in general. So yeah, I guess that's basically it. But just to point out again, this was like a project that I started off by extracting things out of Slick Inbox, and it's not perfect, right? There are a lot of bugs and things that are not ready yet. And in fact, Backoffice is not on Hex yet because it's still moving so fast. So there's a lot of breaking changes and everything. And I definitely did not make every decision right. Like there are things that might come back and bite me in the ass. Sorry for the language. But yeah, like that's also why, putting it out here, I'm happy to be challenged. Putting it out here, let people contribute. And I already have some contributor on Backoffice itself. But I hope that with this, we can learn from each other and ultimately come up with a project that saves us a lot of time trying to reinvent the view every now and then. So yeah, if you would like to reach out, I'm on Slack quite a bit, on the Elixir Slack. Twitter, GitHub, like I mentioned before, that's my handle. And here is the QR code, like with a little dinosaur that you can look at as well for Backoffice's GitHub link. But I think that's basically it from me. Do you have any questions?
Edison, thank you so much. That demo was so exciting. It's really cool to see how powerful PETAL Stack is and how you're building out this app. I have a couple questions, and if other folks have questions, they can kind of trickle them through in the QA or get my attention some other way. But my first question for you, this is actually like a personal question because I'm really excited by everything that you just showed us. I've heard a lot of really cool things about Tailwind and Alpine, but as somebody that's like a little afraid of the front end, I haven't really dipped my toes into those technologies. So any advice for people like me who are excited to work with LiveView and want to bring in Tailwind and Alpine, but are new to that stuff?
So Pragmatic Studio, Mike from Pragmatic Studio has a great article of how you can integrate Tailwind into your existing 1.4 and 1.5 Phoenix app. So I think that's a good place to start. So you just get started with Tailwind. But Tailwind itself is like, there are a lot of resources out there about how you can build things, but the general gist of Tailwind is just what they call utility CSS. So you have like specific style, but they're all classes. But other than that, I don't really have much to go on. You could probably find a lot of good resources on how Tailwind itself actually works. And then with integrating to Phoenix, you have that article that I just mentioned. But with Alpine, it's really simple, really. You don't even need to set up in your package JSON setup. And I was on the same point as you. I was afraid I don't want to go into the accept modules and touch JavaScript on my app. But with Alpine, you can just use a CDN as well. So put it in your layout on the top of your file, and basically everything works as you think you would. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your questions.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I popped the link to that article. I just Googled the article you mentioned from Pragmatic Studio on adding TailwindCSS to Phoenix. That'll be in the chat. I've got another question for you, and then we'll kind of keep working our way down the list. So you mentioned something on the roadmap for Backoffice is adding themes, which is very cool. Love a good theme. Anything else on the roadmap?
There are a lot of things. So like I made a few issues on the GitHub as well that you can check it out. So some things are like association support, for example, is not entirely the best. Like I said, started off with my project and I didn't really have heavy needs for those. So association support is still pretty experimental. Then things like on roadmap might be dashboard, like more widgets really would be a good thing. So for example, I would like to add like a chart widget, perhaps backed by the context library. But the idea is that, to provide, like I mentioned before, provide building blocks that you can use to build up in the rest of your app. So you just provide a chart and it knows how to render. But other than that, like optimization probably is another one. So there are like few quirks every now and then, like maybe I shouldn't use assign, maybe I should use temporary assign. I'm not clear on that front, like things like that. So optimization will always be like a welcome contributions as well. But yeah, I don't know, like the roadmap is still slightly unclear, I say, because there's just so many things that you can do with a admin tool. But yeah, I guess the main thing is to make sure that this works for a lot of use case, right? So if you have any use case that doesn't fit, like I would love to hear about them as well. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Got another question for you here. I think we want to know, is the Tailwind version you're using in Backoffice version 1 or 2? And if 2, do you use the JIT?
It's version 2. I think version 1 has been quite a long time. So it's version 2, but it is not using the JIT version yet. That came out like maybe a couple months ago. And I'm not sure if that's already in stable state. So I haven't really looked into that yet. I've seen someone mention how to integrate the JIT into Phoenix apps, but I haven't really caught up with it. So like contributions are very welcome. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, maybe that'll be your next talk once that happens. We've got a few more minutes left. If anybody has any other questions, I do have one more, so I'll jump in. So I was kind of looking through the README for Backoffice, and in your slides you talk about how to get set up and how to add your routes and stuff like that. I'm curious if you've thought about extending Backoffice to use generators to do things like kind of scaffold out any of the resource setup or route specifications.
Yeah, so that might be interesting, right? But the thing is, like I guess what you're referring to is basically when you use Phoenix, you can Phoenix generate context, and then it would generate the context files for you, the test files for you, and then you can just copy paste the routes into your router. So that's something definitely possible. But right now, like Backoffice doesn't really do a lot of things that you would need. For example, with PHX, like generators, you would need to set up schemas and everything, all these boilerplates. But with Backoffice, is really just one line, at least for the modules. You just use one modules and that's it. But it's definitely a good idea to lower like the barrier of entry as well. So that's definitely like a consideration. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for that response. All right, so I don't see any new questions trickling in, and we're almost just about at time. So Edison, thank you so much. This was great. I learned a lot, and you're definitely inspiring me to start picking up and digging into Alpine and Tailwind and the rest of PETAL, and Backoffice seems like a really exciting and powerful tool. Definitely check it out if you haven't yet, to our audience, and thank you again.